What is up, guys? Zan here with AntCap from Playbook.gg, and we're back with another edition of our Madden 20 Wishlist. This week on our Wishlist series, Scheme Diversity and why it has to make its way into Madden 20. Before we dive into this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the great tutorials that we've got headed your way here on the Playbook.gg YouTube channel. Okay, guys, so welcome back. As always, I am with AntCap. AntCap, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great, Zan. Thanks for asking. Excited to talk about another topic for Madden 20, in which we're going to basically look at, the ability to make people pay for having the wrong scheme out there, wrong personnel. Basically looking at the front seven in the run game is pretty much our primary target for this video.
Yeah, the video that you are seeing right now in the background is just a recording of the VY Electrify versus Canes game. Now, I want to get this straight from the jump that in no way, shape, or form are we blaming or critiquing anybody's playstyle in this video. We are talking completely objectively, constructively with our criticisms about Madden 19 as it pertains to evolving and bettering the game into Madden 20. So, whatever happens in this game, we're not blaming anyone for playing a certain way. We're just talking objectively about the game itself and why there needs to be better balance.
This is absolutely correct. We took this game as an example is because of the way that they play. VY is typically a two tight end player where he's doing his single back wing flex. And typically, Canes is going to be in his 3-3-5, where he's going to be putting safeties at linebackers, which is definitely something that a lot of people do as far as meta. And we just want to kind of discuss how that looks and how that should feel in a game that needs balance.
Now, we're going to see a number of different defenses from Canes in this game. We're not necessarily going to commentate it. We're just going to let it go in the background. We're more so going to focus on what the meta is. But I'm sure that you will see a fair amount of 3-3-5, some big nickel over G here. And we're just going to talk about the meta. And let's go ahead and dig right into it. Let's start it off with the big argument that I was in with a number of members in our community throughout the year. And that is the 3-3-5 as a run defense. And Cap, let me know, what do you personally think about the 3-3-5 defense?
To me, it has no business being a run defense. One, you've got three down linemen, which are both guards are uncovered. That's typically what the meta is. And with that ability to have two uncovered guards, they should absolutely be able to get to second level and manhandle any of the meta in which you're putting speed on the field with your strong safeties, free safety type builds. It should be something that you should be able to have your own line matter when it comes to strength, when it comes to ability to just manhandle people. And that's just not something that we've seen in past Maddens.
No, I think it's been a while, in fact. And now this is something that's near and dear to my heart personally. Now, something that I've always said is like, I don't like to give self-serving feedback. I've never been that type to give self-serving feedback. But just as someone who plays a lot of under center and likes to utilize a lot of quick passing from under center, get tight ends on the field, and kind of create my own offenses, I'm very, very anti-meta in the way that I've always played. It gets harder and harder each year to run a unique offense, especially an under center offense. It feels like there's honestly some neglect towards, under center in general.
Absolutely. If we go back in history as far as what the defenses have been, a lot of people have been able to stay in, whether it's been dollar, whether it's been nickel 3-3-5. A lot of defenses that put undermanned, undersized players on the field for the speed in order to, basically handle your spread type offenses, your, three wide receiver sets aren't getting penalized year to year in the run game the way they should. And that's something that, as we do this video, we're definitely discussing, the balance of what we want to see that, if you're looking to be a pass defensive formation, you should definitely, have a little bit of, a run penalty per se, and vice versa. If you want to be playing in, a 4-6 or a 5-2 type of alignment, you should definitely not be able to cover the field as well as you do. And that's the type of things that we want to make sure that as we discuss these videos, we talk about competitive balance and what that looks like and what we would like to see in Madden 20.
So let's talk about the standard 3-3-5 formation. You see right now that VY is kind of adjusting his personnel within that. Now, Canes is definitely going to be a three receiver, one running back, one tight end guy. That's always been the way he is. So that's a fine personnel matchup, in my opinion. However, when you start to talk about how some of these formations, especially the 3-3-5 normal, and even to a degree the 3-3-5 odd over the last 2 years also, how those defenses seem to be able to bottle up the run. There's a number of things that you can point to within the formation that allow them to kind of be over effective against the run, if you will. And the first one, let's go ahead and talk about it, cross manning.
Absolutely. Cross manning, especially the way that it worked this year and then it's worked in the past, basically doesn't have your safeties go into a read and react. They basically are, as soon as it shows that it's a run play, they are going to sprint down. And because of the cross manning of safeties and how that's used as a tactic in competitive play, it doesn't make you pay enough for the ability to where it goes ahead and gives you all the benefits of stopping the run with really no uh, real negatives by staying in it. In my opinion, if there's some way to tie that into where play action they react the same exact way, and by going to a play action pass, now they're inside the box at the 4 or 5 yard depth, and you're able to throw over their head. Now we've got competitive balance. If you're going to take the aggressiveness of putting them in a cross man, you should not have the ability to, basically not pay for it when it's a play action decoy.
Exactly. So you talk about how the 3-3-5 works. You're talking about one nose tackle. For those that don't know, a nose tackle typically is also called a shade tackle. They're either going to be playing head up on a center, or they're going to be playing one of the two shoulders, hence the name shade tackle. The other two are going to be defensive ends, and they're going to line up in five techniques. For those that don't know what five techniques are, those are going to be basically wide stances. A two technique is in the A gaps, a four technique is in the B gaps. A five technique is going to essentially be basically I'm sorry, I misspoke there. What you're looking at is a nose tackle is going to be over the center. A two technique will be over the guard. A four technique will be over the tackle. So a one technique is going to line up in the A gap. A three will be in the B gap, and then a five will line up technically outside shoulder of the tackle. So when you're talking about the formation, you are going to have basically a nose tackle and then no other lineman basically within the depths of or within the range of the tackles, the offensive tackles. So you have so much room for those guards to get to the second level, but because of the cross man, those safeties lose their read and react phase. And you go ahead and talk about what that means for those that don't know.
Yeah, basically it gives them the opportunity to sprint down to the line of scrimmage without having any real responsibility when it comes to the pass game. So if the programming shows that it's a run, those guys are going to sprint down. They're most of the time what they're doing is they're cross manning them, so they're all meeting in the middle, and now you're essentially bringing basically a funnel type of run defense. You've got your two safeties that are going to be with your user going to the middle point to where now you got three people in the middle of the field with really only two guards to be able to pick them up. The fact that now you're creating numbers on that side of the ball in a defensive formation that you really should never have numbers in the middle of the ball, due to the fact that there's no penalization for that type of tactic in the game.
So the 3-3-5, the three linemen, three linebackers, you have a six-man box with two high safeties that can immediately fly down into the run game without necessarily being involved in the run fit. For those that don't know, the cover two doesn't have your safeties in the run fit. They're not run defenders. But when you basically run cross-man coverage in this game, whenever you base a line and then individually man up a player, this was actually a tip that I put on Playbook GG last year for one of our guides. It basically tells them, regardless of their awareness of their play rec rating, hey, this is a run, play the run, and they react right away, regardless. So this allows you to play a two high defense, six in the box, knowing that your two high safeties can be cross man and make it an 8-man run fit against some of these 6, 7, and 8-man offensive line / tight end groupings that are going to allow you to run the ball. So by coming out in a formation under center, like I might come out in something like this, what you're seeing right now, the single back wing flex. But having the mathematical advantage of those tight ends on the field does nothing for you because those safeties are able to fly down initially despite you having a clean box count.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I think that's something that year to year, where there's always things that, the community finds, whether it's something that, you've come up with, or, it's just kind of trickled, through the meta. People by manning up different players, the issue has always been those guys get a direct route to the running back. When stretch was a big thing and toss, taking a cornerback and manning them up on the wide receiver, let them basically shoot down and cover two. These are things that are in the game that exist that really put the balance away from the offense and into the defensive hands, and that's why you can get away with running a defense, in my opinion, that does not match up the personnel that it should, but still get away with it. So you always have the best of both worlds. When pro players, Joe, go and try to find what is their offense, what their defense, their real thought is, what can I do to defend the pass and the run with personnel, and basically, hedge my bet that I can stop both. And as long as they continue to allow these type of tactics in the game, you're going to see those type of nickels and dollars and dimes still persist, and that can stop two tight end sets. And I definitely think that's something that we need to figure out a way to not happen in Madden 20.
So that was our first reason why 335 and different formations like 335 odd dollar, for instance, can stop the run as the cross man. The second one is just a point blank period physics. The lack of physics interactions between offensive linemen and some of these safeties that guys are playing at linebacker. You see, Apke was a name that was big earlier in the year. For those that don't know who Apke is, he is a special teamer for the Redskins. He doesn't even start for them. He's not a big guy. He's not 225, 230 pounds. Guys will play him at linebacker position because he's tall and fast. You can user him. But he also is willing to take on those second level blocks from those guards. Let's just say if the guards get there to begin with, which a lot of times they don't. That'll be something that's part 3 coming up in our video here. But they're able to take on those guards.
Yeah, that's definitely something that what I like to see is the physics actually matter, the weight, the strength matter. If you start seeing that your guard gets to that second level, takes on that undersized, strong safety that has speed, puts him on his butt, and then goes next level to the safeties, you're going to start rethinking, can I put 195 pound, 200 pound strong safety in the box and not pay for it? Undersized linemen right now, I'm a big fan of the Falcons, and Deion Jones sits between 225, 230. And he's considered a really small linebacker that has speed. And part of the reason why he's a sideline to sideline, they got to keep the guards off of him. They got to, basically allow him to make plays. 335 is not that type of defense. You're inviting those guards to come down and basically make your players play the attack of the O lineman, and then shed and then get to the ball carrier. And no business should they ever win that when they get locked up. The strength and the ability for a O lineman, they're smiling when they see that, and we just don't get that type of. Madden doesn't make them pay for putting those players on the field that way.
Just think about how people construct their roster. You see right there, VY, pretty good drive, runs the ball. He's a big time runner. One of the guys that we chose for this. The reason we chose him is because he runs the ball so well. You notice that he's done a good job running against the big nickel over G earlier in this game, and we got a 7-7 ball game. But part of the reason that this is, it's painfully evident. It's not even worth debating, even though we'll talk about that as well. There are a number of pro players that insist on debating this topic. Look at the way people construct their rosters. If actually putting a 90 overall offensive lineman at guard or tackle or shoot all 5 positions had an advantage, there would be players out there that do so. But they really largely don't, because offensive lineman ratings don't seem to matter that much.
That's the truth in a nutshell. You go ahead and take a look at every single one of those lineup that got submitted for the Madden Bowl or Club Championship or whatnot. There are several players that are hard nosed, run the ball 80% of the time. they still know that paying more than 20 cap to 25 cap for a player just does not give them the return in investment that it should if you go ahead and spend a 30, 32 cap and run the ball with a little bit more speed from the guards pulling. I'll get a little bit more strength out there to make sure that they get second level. But because they are not getting rewarded for that, they're not submitting those lineups. And there's good reason for it. If I was a runner and I knew that I can get a 92 overall type of guard out there that's going to manhandle any of these people that are putting safeties in the box, I'm going to put that in as a runner. But you're not seeing that. And the reason why you're not seeing that is because it doesn't really matter to a degree that makes a difference on the field.
Totally agree with you right there. One of the things that I constantly got into early in the year was this was the exact topic that I talked about. I've been standing fighting on this hill for not only just this year. I've been fighting on this hill for upwards of 5 years. This is something that matters nearly and dearly to me because game balance, not just because that's the style of Madden that I personally play. Yes, that is true. I'm not going to deny that for a minute. But I'm also talking about just in general physics of the game. We have seen Apke take on 300-pound linemen and bare minimum for stalemates. There's a lot of pro players out there. Again, I'm not afraid to name names. Dubby's a big time guy that I've gone head to head with on this. He says all the time, Apke doesn't block shed. My response to that is great. I'm glad he doesn't block shed. One, he shouldn't. Two, you're lucky that he's even forcing the stalemate that he forces.
Absolutely. I think there's a difference between block shed and expectation that he should basically either be running away from the guard, giving up 4 or 5 yards, trying to run around the guard, but he should never try to head up on him and feel like he should not be on his back the majority of the time. You just wouldn't see players be asked to take on guards that way. It's just not their game. And if you watch any undersized lineman, they usually have the hogs up front to keep them clean. And when they don't, that's when they get the ball run down their throat. That's why I don't see how a strong safety, no matter in what capacity, should be asked to go ahead, stand up a offensive lineman, hold their ground, and not give up, the ability for, just easy run lanes because that's what it should do. They should basically manhandle those players.
But Antcap, what about the time in the playoffs that the Chargers, they played no linebackers, they played pass rushing D ends and D tackles, and they played a bunch of safeties and they stopped the Ravens.
All right. So first of all, you're talking about Lamar Jackson. Okay, there was a specific game plan for him and for the reason why they wanted to get more speed on the field, and it wasn't exactly the same type of game plan going in. They were running more read option. They were running more quick handoffs, and to be honest with you, they did crowd the box and they had to sell out. They sold out with if I remember correctly, 8 in the box in that situation to where they beat them with numbers, not with players. And I think that's the difference in that argument. Where, correct me if I'm wrong, when I remember that game, it wasn't that they were able to put man on man on man. It was what we're going to swarm the box and make that guy throw the ball.
That's 100% correct. It was evidenced by two things in the game. One, complete and utter disrespect for Lamar Jackson as a passer. And two, they always played +1 in the box. There was not a snap, and I went through the film. There was really not a snap throughout that game where if the Ravens came out with 7 blockers, the Chargers didn't have 8 in the box. If the Ravens came out with 6 blockers, the Chargers came out with 7 in the box. If the Ravens came out with base 5-man line, no attached tight ends, completely spread, then the Chargers would have 6 in the box. Because what they were constantly doing is saying, you know what, we can leave the receivers one-on-one. Lamar Jackson is not good at this point in his career. He's not beating us in the playoffs. We're just gonna slant and spill the entire game. It was 100% schematic, which is
Mm-hmm.
not the case in Madden. We just talked about it. Cross manning from a too high look is not the same as packing 8, sometimes 9 in the box and slant and spilling the entire time.
Absolutely, and I would beg to make sure that they kind of caught the Ravens off guard with that, and that's not a conventional scheme that they were able to do. If they were to replay that game knowing they were going to do that, I definitely feel like that would have gone a different way. It's not like you can play a game of Madden and know okay, this is what the scheme is, and now let me make that guy pay for it. Because you're running that same defense over and over and over again. And, it's kind of like the 5-2 sneaking up on somebody. The first time you play it, you're like, wow, that's overpowered. And then you kind of think through what I should do the next time, and then you totally dominate it type deal. And I feel like that's kind of what happened in that game where, they had a great schematic plan to go in, caught the Ravens off guard a little bit with it, stack the box, and it's a different type of argument, and I don't think that they correlate. I really don't think that that's what people want to hang their hat on for their argument that it can be done in the NFL, because it's not exactly the same thing we're talking about here.
Exactly. And even if you seem to persist, because I know there will be that guy in the comments that did not make it this far to this point in the video, and they will feel smart bringing this up. What happened when the Patriots came at him the next week?
The Patriots dominated the game. And it was something that, when you have a pass game, you can't exactly go ahead and play the same exact style. And did they even go to that? I don't believe so. I think that was a
They
schematic
tried,
thing.
and the Patriots brought a fullback out, and they just ran
Okay.
the ball down their throat the entire
So,
game.
so talk about that. The Patriots had the answer and said, hey, if you're going to go to this, you've already shown it. We're going to put more bigger personnel out there, and we're going to make you pay for it. Right. So, again, to the point we said earlier, they were prepared for that style, and they went ahead and made sure that they had the answer for it. That's what we're talking about, two entirely different things where you can get away with, you know, calling a play 20,000 times. You watch some of these guys, on stream, and how many times they played a certain call 20,000 times and not have to pay for physics to be in the game against the run.
It comes down to that. If what we haven't said already isn't enough to convince you, I mean, we've talked about three different variables, correlated them to real life. Let's go ahead and add another one. Targeting. Block targeting is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious.
It absolutely is, depending on where you have your user's depth, depending on who you send where. Um, just in general, we talked about the screen game in a previous, Madden 20 wish list, where people aren't going to target the right players to block. When you combine all those factors together, you really have the ability to manipulate what you're going to get out of the offensive line. And when I say that, it's a game of programming. The more you play a game, the more you're going to see how people react when you do certain things. And the word manipulate is definitely a word that you throw around because it is a pre thought of how I can make this player do a certain thing that's going to be something that we can get accustomed to depending on what they're doing. So, it's definitely a tough subject as far as how do we get it better. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not someone that's going to be able to say, this is what needs to happen. But it's not tough to look behind, the end result and saying this isn't it.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that is it right there. It comes down to programming. Players know if I stand here, it doesn't matter if that guy's a 77 overall or a 97 overall. He will do this. And what we talk about a lot of times with the user shooting is in 3-5, guys will make it worse. They'll take the outside linebackers who are standing behind the D ends. At least they've got a body in front of them, and they'll back them up 2 steps, and then they'll move them outside 2 steps. And because they know that if they stand there, now all of a sudden that guard will not go to the second level and block them. They'll just try to slap a double team on the D end and never peel off and go to the second level, allowing that user to shoot in untouched.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just Madden preparation, right? That's something that, a lot of people are going to say you're going to play the game that's given to you. And there's nothing really wrong with that when it
Definitely
comes
not.
to playing a video game. You're going to look at different things and say, okay, this is what we're playing, and this is how I'm going to combat it and, put myself in the best position to win. Now, what we're asking for, and what this wish list is really about is how do we be forward thinking in front of, knowing what people are doing, knowing what um, each year has been some pain points, and how do we get better at that so that way, little by little, these things that continue to pop up from year to year can work themselves out to where the balance is restored, and we can have a game in which it's about game planning, it's about execution, and it's really less about being able to understand how to get more out of a defense that shouldn't be the way it is.
Absolutely. When it comes down to it, you need to bring the math back. You need to bring the physics in. I'm not even saying bring the physics back. It needs to be physics needs to be implemented, not just a system that mimics physics. Because, like we said, guys like Apke, 195-pound safeties, or guys like Ron Parker playing linebacker, taking on. I don't even care if it's a power up version of a guy. 315-pound man with nobody in front of him, gets full head of steam out of a crouch, leverage, low man, and gets to engage with man that weighs over 100 pounds less than him. I don't
Yeah,
care what your run block rating is.
absolutely. That man in no right should go ahead and try to take that player on and have any thought of winning. I mean, that's the type of guy who's trying to get around the guy to make the play and opening up more lanes. You're taught a lot of times to, take on the block if you got people around you in order to make sure that you're not creating more space for people. If you go ahead and you try to run around it, an offensive lineman is going to be good enough to shift his hips, turn you to the direction he wants you, and the running back's going to go ahead and take the lane that was created. In no universe should that guy stand him up and not get driven back or on his butt when those, and we're not talking a 20-pound difference. You're not talking, a 300-pound lineman versus, a 250 linebacker, and that's only 50. We're talking, 220 or less. Those are not linebacker builds. Those are guys that are hybrids that are strong safeties, in that type of mold. They should not be the ones that you can rely on. And until we get to that point, you're going to see roster creation that's going to, basically benefit those players to get 95 speed guys that can run around the field.
I've always said this: football is very, very cyclical. Right now, we're in a spread revolution in the modern day NFL, and I'm not saying that will ever go away. But there's a reason teams like the Cowboys can just come down, or the Raiders a couple years ago, and just get a bunch of hog mollies against these very light defenses that are typically equipped to defend 3 and 4 wide receiver spread sets. A lot of these hybrid players, you get the Deion Buchanans, the Mark Barons of the world, the Miles Jacks of the world, the Jabril Peppers of the world. Those guys that
Mm-hmm.
are kind of hybrid builds, not quite a safety, but also not big enough to be a linebacker. You're going to get those guys, and then you have those hog molly type teams where they're just like, what, our identity is we're going to run the ball down your throat. We're going to put extra blockers on the field, and we're going to prosper even if our pure athlete talent isn't quite what the other teams are. We're just going to come out and be physical. That
Mm-hmm.
physical, again, the root word of physical is physics. We need to have that
Mm-hmm.
in the game in order to make this work.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking, to the truth of this, and I think that's what this video is really, trying to knock home. It's something that we're doing these videos really as a opportunity to get your feedback, give our feedback to where the more we are able to discuss this um, in a way that is constructive towards the common goal is to get Madden better. We all want to be able to play this game 12 months of the year, have fun with it, not have those frustrating points. And these type videos are to talk about what's frustrated us through the years, and kind of give the ability for things to change. And that's why we're asking you, go ahead, put some other ideas in the chat, basically, to let us know what has been those pain points for you as this has been for us.
Yes, absolutely. We're not going to make it to the culmination of this matchup here between VY and Canes. However, we highly encourage you guys to check out Friday Night Football on twitch.tv/MuttheadTV, where these players are participating in our $1,000 tournaments every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. But I'll give you a little spoiler if you don't want to go and watch. So if you want to go watch, go to the twitch.tv/EA Madden NFL 2 and pull up the rest of this video. But for those that want to know, essentially what's going to happen right here is Canes is going to win by 2 scores, and he's going to use a fair amount of 3-3-5 within his defense, along with that big nickel over G. So again, we're not trying to slander any players. Ultimately, at the end of the day, these players are just doing what works in the game. They're going to play whatever game EA puts out and take advantage of it to the best of their abilities to win, Madden games. However, I think it's always important to remember we always have to strive for a realistic football game at the end of the day. We all want a good realistic football game that is highly competitive and has good balance. If you like this video, check out one of the videos on your screen right now. And for more in-depth analysis, visit www.playbook.gg for detailed game plans written by pro Madden players. Master the game with playbook.gg.